everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Good Company with Anurag and Sunandan. With me is my main man, host of the evening, Dr. Anurag Batra, Chairman, Editor in Chief, Business World and Exchange for Media.
Thank you, Sunandan. And what an evening it is. We are in interesting times where we live in a new abnormal. I don't call it the new normal, but good companies are getting created, good ideas are floating around, and there has never been a time to discuss good ideas. So today we are in good company, and what a fabulous panel we have this evening to discuss the most important issue of our times, that is technology and how digital transformation is happening. Of course, COVID is the chief digital transformation officer. It has forced all of us to hasten our digital and technology integration. So let's talk to this fabulous group of people on how to maximize technology and digital to make a social impact and to build businesses.
Yeah, and as we all know, that there is a common thread amongst the highest performing organizations that mastering technology brings out the best in business strategy every time, right? So, shall we start? Why don't you start introducing the panel?
Yeah, so without much ado, let me first introduce the panel. These are all famous people. They really don't need an introduction to the kind of audience that we are talking to. But as is customary, let me formally introduce all four of them. Let me first introduce Mr. Puneet Gupta. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Times Internet. Puneet has been fortunate to play multiple roles in the digital ecosystem, from coding to product management to growth and marketing to business leadership. He is a digital business and product leader with a demonstrated track record of delivering strong growth, profitability, revenue, market share, audience appreciation, and product engagement. If you look at metrics across both large marketing issues and how market-leading brands have done, which are in the portfolio of the Times Internet, you will see that Puneet is mostly an entrepreneur. He has built businesses within Times Internet. In his current role, he is the Chief Operating Officer of Times Internet and is driving monetization strategy and overall business growth. Welcome, Puneet. Puneet is also a BTech from IIT Delhi, and he's done his executive MBA from IIM Joka, or IIM Calcutta as it's more popularly known as. Let me welcome Puneet. Good to have you on the panel. And let me welcome Vivek Sundar. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Swiggy. Swiggy was always relevant, but in COVID times, they've reinvented and made themselves even more relevant. Vivek is currently leading Swiggy's business operations as the CEO since July 2018. Prior to that, he led the PNG business as a CEO in East Africa, based out of Nairobi. He has been with PNG for more than 20 years in various capacities across developing markets like India and Africa, as well as developed markets like UK, Singapore, Korea, and in what he calls the hybrid markets, China, Thailand, and Malaysia. Clearly, he accumulated a lot of flying mileage points, and COVID has kind of made up for the last 20 years of flying he's done. Vivek is a graduate from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and prior to that, he studied computer engineering from the Delhi University. Vivek, welcome. Let me now introduce Pankaj Virmani. He's the founder of Clovia, and I'm on their mailing list, so I have kind of no plus. He was part of our Young Entrepreneurs Year awards a couple of years back. He's co-founder at Applied. Pankaj Virmani is a serial entrepreneur and has co-founded and grown two companies in the past, which went through successful acquisitions and got featured on multiple global forums, including Red Herring Asia and Deloitte India Fast 50. In his previous role, he was heading the incubator or the company builder Mountain Apollo India, an initiative of Mountain Partners Zurich. Pankaj's latest venture, Clovia, one of the fastest growing lingerie brands in India. The brand sells a unit every 4 seconds through its online and offline channels. Pankaj was awarded the Young Entrepreneur Award by Business World and Retail CEO of the Year by Global Leadership Awards in 2019. He's a graduate from IIT Delhi. So clearly we have IIT Delhi and IIM Calcutta in big way on the panel. Welcome, Pankaj. And Sue, it's now your chance to introduce the last panelist.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anuranjita Kumar is now a partner with IndusCap Venture and the founder of Women in Technology India. So Anuranjita kicked off her career with Procter & Gamble in 1994 and then with Citi in 1995. Anuranjita was the first South Asian woman leader to be appointed as COO and head of HR Global Banking EMEA in 2007. Also, Anuranjita was the first woman management committee member at Citi. All this led Anuranjita to be recognized as the upcoming South Asia leadership talent by Asia Networks. And for her excellent contribution to the field of HR, she was honored as the most powerful HR professional of India by the World HRD Congress in 2012 and amongst the most powerful women leaders by Fortune in 2013. So recently, she is featured in the Economic Times Women Ahead List 2018 for being a role model for India and further by leading Asian D&I organization House of Rose Professional Singapore based. So Anu is a management graduate from XLRI, specializing in human resources, and apart from her regular work, Anuranjita spends considerable time coaching senior executives and startup leaders around the world. Welcome Anu, and welcome all of you. Welcome Vivek, welcome Puneet, welcome Pankaj.
Thank you.
So shall we start, Anurag?
Absolutely.
Let's start with the ball rolling. And the first question I think I had, which is on everybody's mind, we constantly walk a line between the lessons from the past and the uncertainties of the future. So how do you excel and build a competitive edge in the digital world? So 3 things, organizations should focus on. So shall we start with Puneet?
Yeah. The key, Sunandan, in my mind, is to first understand what is the meaning of digital.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a large company and you think that digital is for startups, then it's a recipe for failure. To me, digital is not internet, it's not IoT, it's not machine learning, but digital is a mindset. It is a culture, and it is the speed at which non-adopters will lose market share and very soon they will lose relevance, right? So how do we now make our organizations ready for digital? And that's when they will have a competitive edge. In my mind, 4 things, not just 3, right?
Okay.
First is information access has to be ubiquitous. In large politically managed companies, you would see that data is power. But those companies, data is power when data is held with a few people. In digital organizations, data is power because everyone has the same access to data real time. The second point in my mind is decentralized decision making. Digital is fast paced, and if you have a org structure where everything bubbles up 3 layers up for a call to be taken, then you're not digital, irrespective of the product that you are making or the kind of talent that you have in your organization. Third is empowering individuals. So 2 and 3 are linked, but 3 really takes it down to the lowest level in the organization. Is everyone empowered to do the right things for their own job? And they don't need to run around with processes and people and superiors to figure out, can they take this next step? And the fourth is very closely linked to the third. I call it de-risking risk-taking.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of organizations talk about the fact that we reward risk-taking, but everyone has to really go back and see what is the level at which they're comfortable with risk-taking. And once we de-risk risk-taking, that's when people will say, okay, I will try this next new thing because this is going to take me ahead, and link it with empowered so that this call to be moving fast gets taken at a junior most level and doesn't bubble up at all. So to me, these are the 4 things that come inside digital being a mindset, and that can give a competitive edge to organizations.
Fabulous. Vivek, what's your view?
Everything that Puneet said makes a lot of sense. Obviously, I've seen it coming from a largish company to a startup. Right. I think the important thing is to keep the customer at the center of it. I'm sure it's been repeated a million times over, but it is amazing how quickly operations and processes and business plans and business models come and take precedence over what the customer is actually doing, saying, and not saying, etc. A good example of that is we thought we had the tens of millions of customers who order food on our fingertips, because of course we have 100% data on what they're doing. But come COVID, we suddenly found that all old norms about whether they will order or not and so on and so forth have been thrown away. So we've had to redo the whole thing about splitting the customer into different habits. And so post-COVID, right now we have a bunch of people who are saying, I need more of you, because of course I can't go out and eat, so I need to order in more. There's a bunch of people who are saying, I'll never order you, on the opposite end of the spectrum, because they're saying, I'm not sure I want to order outside food. And there is a few people who are sort of testing their toes and ordering from restaurants that they trust. Now, this was not a cohort that we actually had prior to March 2020, but we've just had to quickly learn what's changing, who's going into what cohort, why is the behavior changing, including things like 20% of Bangalore now sitting across a lot of tier 2 towns. That's again something we couldn't have forecasted. So right now, a majority of our population that used to order like massively is sitting in their mums and dads' homes in small towns.
So what are the three things organizations should focus on? Three things. The three things organizations should focus on to excel in this.
No, I would say it's 1, 2, and 3 customer.
Oh, single-minded.
Yeah, everything can follow. Everything can then come out of it. Of course, everything else is important, but if you lose track of that, then it's beginning of the end.
Goes back to Kotler, What about you, Pankaj?
So I think so Puneet made it very easy for at least for me to kind of articulate it very well, at least in terms of the data and the power of data and the whole decentralization bit. I think as an addition to that, there's so rather the 4 that has already been added, and the 5th, which is the customer, which absolutely is the at least so I think I can speak from a brand perspective, right? Because we come from a business which is predominantly a very traditional business, and I remember 2015 when we were in starting the brand, people would say that why would somebody buy lingerie on the internet, right? And it's such a unthinkable scenario where say that there's no trial, nothing, and even then we used to discuss internally, right? And we used to discuss internally that what you don't understand is in tier 2, tier 3 towns there is anyways no trial, right? So the evolution that we guys have seen, I think what we can see from a from a perspective of a brand is which comes from a very, very traditional value chain, is that while there is a conversation of innovation and other things, I think the incentivization of innovation is also something which I would like to add here, because that's how you inject it into the ecosystem. I think our biggest challenge, for example, was how to get the traditional sales teams to start absorbing digital/technology as a tool where they themselves come back and ask us that, hey, can you give this reporting to me real time? And the first time that happened to me, I was literally on verge of tears. I said, dude, it took me 3 years to literally make you ask me this, right? So I think the whole idea from the very grassroots, the whole conversation was that make a hero out of the person who's actually driving innovation in his own little way. And I think that's where it starts to kind of get ingrained in the organization. So I think innovation and incentivization of innovation also becomes very, very complex and very rewarding thing while we work towards the whole data bit.
So what you're saying is add innovation to the list of things that we talked about.
Yeah, so innovation and how you incentivize people to the extent that innovation kind of gets ingrained in the organization, all the way down to the people who have been from very, very traditional mindsets.
I think Anu as in Anurag, and I will get into the innovation bit later. But let me then ask Anuranjita, in terms of, what will drive this competitive edge in the digital world, because one of the reasons, what is the reason we said dancing in the digital world is more figuratively, how do you excel? How do you competitively drive your advantage in the digital world? What could be 3 things, Anu, that we can, competition and organizations should do actually? Sorry.
So I think some really good points have been made already, and just building on that, let me tell you, we launched WIT. I kind of work for a fund, and we launched this for-profit startup, which is for skilling and employment of women. And we launched, our timing couldn't be worse, we launched in March. So there was no option but to be really agile and move fast on tech. And we've had to take the whole thing on tech, having an AI bot, which is getting launched actually next week, to do mentoring, counseling, employment. But what we realized is we just had to penetrate how do you do virtual counseling and mentorship. Easy to say, but slightly difficult to do. I'm not going to go into much detail, but net, we had to move fast, get a platform, train people, because digital, trying to connect on relationships on digital beyond a point is tougher. So, it's good to have a conversation like this for an hour, but when you have to build a rapport with somebody, slightly tougher, unless you have a prior relationship with them. How does that really work? And as a result, we were able to attract almost 100,000 women on the platform, and we have 2,000 who just graduated out of that mentoring. But so what I learned from this, I'm a novice amongst many people here in terms of running a business, but what I learned was speed to market. You need to pace up. Once you've identified an issue, you need to pace up, because the problem is there and it's there, it'll redefine itself. So we paced up really fast. Within 40 days, we found a solution. Second is quality underlines it. So you may have a product, but you may have a digital platform, but finally the promise you made to the customer, which Vivek was talking about, nothing will work. I mean, I can do what I can, but if anything we did around skilling or employment did not carry the promise fulfilled, nobody would come back to us. And the third thing I would say is ease of using a digital platform. If you're looking especially at B2C, the ease with which they are able to focus and get to where they need to get to was a big, point for us to be able to move this forward. So I would sum it up saying, pace up in terms of your digital strategy, especially in times of COVID, where problems are getting redefined, consumers are changing behaviors, there are new ways of doing things. There's nothing wrong. Tried, tested. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work, but move fast. Second is the ease of doing things. I mean, sometimes I can talk as a consumer to, 3 seniors here. Sometimes when I go onto the platform as a consumer, it's really confusing. Even if I go on shopping, I'm looking and I can't get to the right stuff. It's frustrating and I just exit the site. So, but the ease and the focus, if you can think about, how you design your product. And the third thing, as I said, fulfilling the promise on that digital platform. To us, those were 3 learnings which I thought I will share with everyone.
Interesting. Pace, ease, and promise. Anurag, you had something to add.
First, I wanted to know, I know his backstory, but how did Pankaj get into the lingerie business? I know the formal story he shared, but someday I'd like to know a little more about that, but that another day. Coming to dancing with digital. Now, let me go to Vivek. There are 2 aspects that I want to. People. At the end of the day, people are at the center of everything we do. As
Absolutely.
Colleagues, employees, customers, our partners. And I keep saying we are in a 3C economy, in a collaborative, contactless, and compassionate economy, or caring economy. Now, tell us, how is digital impacting the various stakeholders? It's impacting some in a positive way, some in at least for current times, in a negative way. If you look at the educational institutions, there is a digital divide. So that's my question, Viv. How is it impacting people? I know it is a positive enabler, but what are its downsides and how can we minimize it as brands and businesses? And a corollary to that question is that, I believe, it's my personal belief, that the more we do digital, the value of human touch goes up. Anything that is in less supply, the value of that goes up. Anything, especially we are human beings. We like face-to-face interaction. We like human touch. We are doing a lot of things by compulsion right now, not by choice. And some may stick beyond this because there's a value. So I would like to focus on the people when we talk of technology, what it enables, what it still needs to enable. So let me start with Vivek first, and then go to Anuranjita, Pankaj, and Puneet.
Sure. So there are many good things that digital enables, and I'm sure all of us are familiar with that. Obviously, it cuts distance much better. So for example, the difference of people who were in headquarters within quotes versus people who are out in the field has gone. So there is no advantage naturally that people had in the headquarters. So I do think that for people who are actually doing the last mile work out in the cities, they've just found that they actually funnily have more access to us or equal access to us versus in the past those who were working in headquarters. So it's one of those things which is a positive. The other aspect is because we are forced to do digital, we are forced to make sure that we are stepping in and covering for what digital doesn't cover, and often that's a good thing. So I completely agree with you that short supply sort of logic. Every single one-on-one that I've had in this last 2 months after unlock has happened, that has been face-to-face, has been appreciated 10 times more than in the pre-digital world, right? Because they know that it's taken special effort. It's like a handwritten note. So I think that we must look at the things that digital enables, do it properly, and with the time and everything else that it saves, we must then reinvest it back into the things that humans can do best with humans. Because reality is a few million years of evolution isn't going away in terms of what we crave for. So I think if we should basically just crunch and more efficiently do what digital allows us to do, whether it's employees, stakeholders, customers, etc., and then use the space available to do what humans do best. I think you're trying to make the most out of a crisis.
Anuranjita comes in. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I think before Anuranjita comes in, I think Swiggy also leads the way along with Zomato in terms of driving content in a big way, because I know a lot of millennials who actually kind of get onto Swiggy to absorb the content which has been given out. You've done tremendous work in driving content.
Absolutely, I agree, and I have first-hand knowledge of that. But let's go to Anuranjita in terms of while technology, there's no question. 2034, it is predicted that there'll be singularity. It may happen before that. But the way things are going, it may happen before. So there's no running away from technology, and technology has lots of positive aspects mostly. But I want to focus on people here, because sometimes technology makes us less mindful. When we are talking to each other, we look at mobile phones. Fortunately or unfortunately, our children are spending much more time. I have young adults, children, while we wanted to reduce their screen time, the screen time has gone up because they're attending the school from there. They're playing more video games. They're shopping, and so on and so forth. So clearly, it takes a toll on your health, on your mental well-being, and there's no playground. So again, that's an education conversation. But I'm saying that digital has its own downside, and how do we minimize it and maximize people's potential? So I want Ms. Kumar to come on to that.
Thank you, Anurag. I think it's a very pertinent point, and I do agree with the reach and the scale which current crisis has brought about. I mean, you can do massive events digitally. We're doing a career fair with 50,000 women. I can't even dream about doing this physically anywhere, right? So we can get the scale that we want. But I'm a little old school on this, and I do believe that everything has to be done in moderation, whether it's too much of human interaction or too much of digital. Any extremes of either side is going to have consequences. So leaving the education bit aside, my children have run back to college. They don't want to be at home. So in spite of COVID, they're back. But when I look at new management training in all your organizations who are working for the first time, they have no idea what it is to have that water cooler conversation. They have no idea what it is to walk into a boss's door. They are very scared to switch on their video. I can't tell you the number of times I go into some of the conversations saying, can everybody come on video? I mean, example from one of our younger team, we were having a Diwali thing and I announced in the morning we're going to do something. It was cumbersome for me to get people to switch on the video because they've just got up from their bed, they don't want to be seen with their hair shoveled, and it was a discomfort. And it really made me think, where are we going with this? So I'm actually a believer that a hybrid model of some bit of physical interaction, and yes, we should use digital to get access to the talent which is sitting very far away from us and possibly cannot migrate to urban centers to work for us. But I think we push it too hard. It's going to lead to consequences of individuality. I am not sure if any manager, any leader today knows how to make teamwork work. You would usually find it much easier to work with teams whom you know. But try talking to a new employee, they're completely lost. They don't know, they don't have a sense of belonging, they don't have a sense of identification. And I think we'll have to work together on this. So for me, there's just one example I want to share. I was in, Switzerland on something, I think about last year. And I went into this hall where they were doing a demo of AI technology. I kid you not, they had put bots next to us, like little bots. And we sat, I felt like I was in a sci-fi movie. And then they put a panel discussion like this, and there was a bot sitting in the panel discussion whose antenna would go up, when the bot wanted to speak. But there was a sense.
Are you allowed to slap the bot or not?
No, you're allowed to talk to the bot.
Otherwise,
there was
that's a good practice in some panel discussion. You may want to bring them as a best practice, but
there was a good break.
I think they have an HR policy around that as well.
It was hilarious, because when I stepped out in between and this bot was talking to me, and I said, Tom, I'm going out, can I get your coffee? And he said, oh, liquid are not my body type. So he was programmed to be humorous too. But I'll tell you, my instant fear, it was just a fear. So there is this discomfort beyond a point, and there will be an era when we come back where you're dealing with machines and humans together. What does that look like? I don't know, have an answer. But all I can tell you is that an extreme of this whole, digital working is not necessarily a great thing for me. Now, you may call me old school, but I strongly believe in a hybrid.
I agree. I mean, there are positives. We save on travel time. There are positives that women are able to look after their children, the ones that want to, with very small children. The negatives are there are no boundaries. Women are, having to do. If you look at an average Indian house, it does not have two separate rooms for two children and a working room for a wife.
But Anurag, the problem is that it's not really working for women. A big hullabaloo has been made about remote working for women. I don't think it works. The numbers are falling. India has gone below 20% as far as women workforce is concerned, which is behind Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And this is the COVID impact, where we have been put 10 years back. So we're really behind now. We've gone from 36% in 2018, 26% last year to 20% this year. So I'm not sure this, having flexibility and remote working when your husband is in office and you have house help at home is very different than the current times.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So women have to do much more. And I agree. I texted one of my best colleagues that works with me just to tell you how good she is. She's not taken a salary in the last 8 months and given it to other colleagues. I have 2 colleagues at Exchange for Media like that who just gave that. And I texted her, and she works on a Saturday, Sunday. She has a grown-up son. And she said, she didn't pick up my call and texted me at 8 p.m. saying, sir, I said, you had a good holiday. She said, no, women don't have a good holiday. They just have to do 2 jobs. I mean, and she's really a very, very, somebody I tremendously respect. And, and I thought about it that day, and I said, she's actually right. They have to do much more. Coming to you, Pankaj, we are talking about dancing in the digital. Is there, as an intrapreneur, Vivek is an intrapreneur. You are an entrepreneur. But how do you create intrapreneurs in your company? How do you create more people who come up with product ideas? Puneet is an intrapreneur. But in an entrepreneur-led company, how do you create entrepreneurs? You talked about fostering innovation, letting people fail, creating an incentive at the end of the day. All that is fine, but does it really work like that when you identify new digital opportunities?
So I'll come to this question. So I come from a company, by the way, Ranjita, which is 70% women, and so I'm the minority there. So I just wanted to quickly add a little bit there.
What did they gift you on the International Men's Day yesterday?
I can't
Nothing.
tell you. It's, if I tell you, I'll have to kill you.
Okay.
Actually,
I want to live, so don't tell me.
But jokes apart, I think what you and Anurag was saying was, it's phenomenal. What you see happening around you, and we have a 70%, as I was telling you, women workforce, and it's not simple. It's not simple at all. And I think it has been a very interesting curve. There was this huge euphoria about, working out of home, and all of a sudden work from home was this big deal. And we have this huge conversation going on in a lot of our founder forums also, where, while there was panic about other things, the real panic was about culture, when, the water cooler talk, the coffee breaks, that's where the brand gets built, at least for what we guys do, and how will that happen? So we have hired at least 30 people in the last, 2 months, and literally I'm struggling, as to how to build that culture within these people. So I think those challenges absolutely exist. And sorry, I kind of digressed from the question you asked.
Absolutely.
But really wanted to kind of add on to that, because it was something very close to our heart right now. I think in terms of building the it's so I had the opportunity to ask, in fact, I was in this forum one time, and Marissa Mayes used to work in Google at that point of time, and I got a chance to talk to her, and I had only one question to ask, that when you were a small company, you were able to do a lot of innovation, but when it became like 20,000 people, how do you still manage the innovation bit, right? I mean, how does it scale? And the answer that came was, it has always stayed very close to my heart, and I think it was a very simple answer as well. It was no rocket science. And she said that the initial nucleus will have to be very, very, that's the
close-knit and strong.
The company is built, kind of gets extrapolated, So what I understood was that if you ingrain it in your DNA, and I'm not trying to be very, floral about the language, but if it is ingrained in your DNA, if it is ingrained in the core, team to start with, and it gets percolated in a way where, when somebody is actually trying to do something, again, incentivization all of a sudden becomes a word which is more, monetary in their respect, but incentivization comes from a lot of different things. It comes from recognition, it comes from, actual empowerment, encouragement, which kind of, all of a sudden people start to understand the value of few things and the representation of how it will impact the lives of others. I think that has worked very well for us. For example, I have had people who were catalog managers, right? Literally, who are just uploading content, and they would come back and say that if you change the color of this button, we believe that it could be a lot more pleasing to the eye. And we got it changed like the next day, and we said, let's see if there's an impact happening from there. And then when the conversion changed, it was percolated through the organization. So I think those are the kind of things, when you start doing, and common forums, you start speaking about them, all of a sudden you start realizing that it does percolate through the organization. It's not simple, especially, so almost, 85 to 90% of our business is digital, but 10% is still offline, and that has gone from 0 to 15, in 12 months, and then now back to 10, because of the COVID time, and then some recovery. We wanted to inculcate this into our offline guys as well, and all of a sudden we realized that the absorption is a lot better than a lot of the traditional guys that we speak to, and that's predominantly because literally we could see the watermelons changing color, and it was phenomenal, the way we've seen it. So I think it has to flow from the top. It has to flow, through constant engagement, constant empowerment of the gang, and I think when that starts to happen, it does happen. There is no secret sauce to it, I think, and that's the way we see it. But you'll have to be very transparent about it, and you have to start giving recognition as it's due. I think that's also something which is very important.
Puneet, I just want, before Sunandan comes in, Puneet, we all talk about successes, okay? All of us, we kind of put it out in every way. But tell us about failures that taught you a lot in the last 8 months. If at all you had any failure, because digital is about experimentation. It's saying, maybe it will work, never saying never. Now we know that never say never. Who knows what will work? So tell us about failures that eventually led to something good. Meet, especially in the digital context.
It's a very, very important question, because everywhere success is celebrated and failure is buried somewhere deep inside, right? You don't want.
Not that I'm suggesting we celebrate Rahul Gandhi, but otherwise it's welcome.
So personally, I think failure, what you have done in that process is the real outcome, right? Things can be successful or fail because of a variety of reasons. But if you have done the right user connect, user research, have the pulse of what the customers need, if you have built it in the right way, if you have promoted in the right way, if you have done the right marketing analytics, that's a bunch of learning, right? And that's what is your real takeaway. And with failure, I think it's important to fail fast. You can't have a $5 million failure at the end of 2 years. You need to have a $500,000 failure or a 200K failure, in 6 months' time, so that you accelerate your failures. And then once you have crossed that time limit of knowing that you are now surviving, you're in that phase, and you have built kind of your playbook on what kind of levers you have to push to drive the business, that is when you get into the acceleration mode for the business. And apart from the business part of it, failure always teaches you humility, and we are all humans, right? we will apply our HI, the human intelligence, to work on a lot of stuff. We'll do 10 things, and it's natural that, for people, varying 5 to 10, some of it is going to fail between 1 and 5, 1 and 4, or whatever that ratio is. It's important to, take away the learnings quickly and move to the next. That's what I would say.
Okay. Sunandan, back to you.
In fact, I wanted to add to what Puneet was saying. In our last episode, Gautam Sinha did talk about the, which was called Let Culture Be the Strategy. And he talked a bit about this as well. And I think therein lies the story of building a culture of innovation, Puneet. And to use the phrase differently, what Clayton Christensen said, innovator's dilemma, I would say non-innovator's dilemma. So what would be the culture? How would you describe a culture of innovation?
I think a lot of what I said in the first part of the discussion, I would have loved to repeat that, right? The culture of innovation is built on empowerment, really. And the culture of innovation is also built on belief in shared goals. And I'm just adding a lot to what Pankaj just said, right? The team will come up with ideas if they believe in the larger cause, if they believe that they are the company, right? They are not a part of the company. They are not an employee of the company, but they are the company, right? When every employee of Clovia believes that they are Clovia, when every employee of Ghana or TY believes that they are Ghana, they are TY, that's when the passion really comes up. You stand for the brand.
So that's passion and ownership, right?
Passion and ownership, and that's what takes it ahead, right? It's not the incentives are there, but the incentives are the support system. Incentives not the driving force.
But that is everywhere.
Yeah.
Why would it be different in a technological firm?
No, technology just accelerates, right? Because the amount of unknowns are just too high.
And the speed of change required is also much faster. We talk of agility. I think when you're in a digital business, you need more agility than any other business.
And I think what Puneet did say about failing fast, right? That's fundamental, really. And I think, Puneet, another question, really. When we talk about technology, a lot of people throw things like AI, ML, IoT, etc. But finally, it's the people, right, behind it who creates all this. So how do you look at people? How do you look at talent? How would you look at hiring the appropriate or the right talent for technology, for that matter?
So the way I look at it, a company is a sum total of broadly 3-4 things, right? One is products, and products in this discussion encompasses the consumer, because products are for the consumer and their relationship and how they feel about the products. Second is processes, and third is people. Now let's look at the role of each of these three, and then I'll come to what kind of people are needed, right? People convert the unknown to the known, right? They are the guys who will say, this is what the consumer needs, this is the requirement, this is how we create a product market fit. So there's an unknown, and people convert the unknown to the known. Products then make the known tangible. You can touch, feel what was the market gap, what is needed. And processes create repeatable results on what is known.
Yep.
So those three things put together make up an organization. Now look at how each of these things would be in digital. In digital, we are saying it's fast moving. There are uncertainties. Technology is moving. Faster innovation is happening. There's a lot of competition. So what kind of people do you need now to convert the unknown to the known, right? It's a set of people who have a high level of curiosity, who want to be in touch with the consumer, who don't want to sit back and say, look at the data. Data is good, but talking to the consumer is the best form to get that information, right? So proactive, who would go out, talk, believe that they are the brand, right? That is the kind of talent that you need to bring in. It's not someone who says that I have 5 years of experience doing this, but the guy who says that I have maybe, are on the side of less experience and more desire to be successful, more ability to see the unknown, more ability to be flexible and find the right opportunities.
If I may say,
Puneet, I must say, Puneet, this is one of the best replies I've ever had, because I've asked this question to many leaders. Nobody's been able to define the fact that, the importance of curiosity, the importance of being able to, and the hunger in the belly, as you said, I think a little while back, and the combination of all these. Yeah. Sorry, Anurag.
I'm just saying, I just want to sum up what he says. I call it the PhD of success: passion, hunger, and desire. People who have a passion for what they do. So select something that you naturally enjoy doing. Second is hunger, which is what Puneet talked of. And there is a desire, there is an aspiration. There is, when I grow up, I want to be like Pankaj Virmani. Okay. The people have role models. He built a company. Can I build it? All those are, all of us have our role models. We have our aspirations. We have some total of our experiences and aspirations. So, Vivek, again, you came from very large company, P&G, right? And again, possibly Swiggy is moving to a scale where they need professional help, they need professional managers, they need to build a brand that is solid. It is already a very good brand, but maybe go to another level with the brand. Tell us, what are the challenges you faced when you came to Swiggy? I mean, where you didn't know things. You came from P&G and what you found not working. Both it was a startup and it is a digital startup. So it's kind of a double whammy. Tell us, did you feel lost? Did it take you time to kind of adjust to this new abnormal, or, like you knew it all?
Now it's 2.5 years, so it feels like a decade ago. But honestly, if you move from a fine dining restaurant to a TGIF, you don't complain about the environment being different, right? It was a known choice that there will be chaos, there will be sort of immature processes and all of that. So let me put it this way. I think the simpler way to describe it is that there were lots of bad things, but there were known bad things, and there were lots of good things, and there were also known good things. It's still painful when you see the bad things, and it's pleasurable when you see the good things. But it's the same as what one. I think it's all about the conditioning of the mind to say, look, you're going to go there, you're going to have chaos, you're going to have randomness in many ways, but it's also going to be a smart bunch of people trying to change the world. And so there's a lot to be done in learning from them and leading them towards doing all of it with a sense of purpose. So I think, if you had asked me this question like 2 years ago, I would have said, where do I begin with the problems that I have? Since you're asking me now, I think it's sort of in the
and I'm trying to talk to you about a digital mindset. Is there something called a digital mindset? Is there something called a startup mindset? Or, that's the real question I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure, I think that if you look at all the people who have even done stupendously well in larger companies, yes, there is an aspect of their behavior that will be about how to navigate the matrix and all of that. So if you keep that skill aside, I do think that there will be people who, even within the confines of a large company, have been great entrepreneurs. They've tried to not just stick to the stated sort of trade path and so on and so forth. So I think in that sense, coming to a Swiggy and basically saying, hey, listen, it just so happens that things are faster here because you pretty much make the decisions and it can happen tomorrow. You don't need to align headquarters. But other than that, I think if you're coming from a humongously customer-centric organization, which I was, to another customer-centric organization, and basically say, look, and everything is now on steroids, right? Everything works fast, it's digital, you have 10,000 times more data and so on and so forth. I think it's not that difficult to see it. If I think of them as very different, then it just makes it very hard to deal with the change. So I'd like to say that there was a lot more in common than there was difference, and the differences were all known differences, which is probably why I'm still surviving.
Okay, I think Surandan, we are at 6:52, and I think we should wrap it up by asking the last two questions.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
Anurangita, tell me, what is the role of women in the new world of digital? You started women in digital technology. What's the role of women in the new world of digital?
You're asking the obvious question to me. I would have hoped you would ask one of the men around the table that question.
You're the founder. You're the founder of Women in Digital.
More than qualified to tell you. But since, for me, I think going back to what Vivek is saying, he came to TGIF. I left fine dining and I came to Greenfield. There are no processes. There are no rules. You set yourself up completely in terms of how you want to operate, and it's been fun. And I think focusing on STEM was very deliberate because it's something I was doing since my city days and RPS days. So I promised myself that before I get closer to 50, at least you guys know what my age could be. But I got to have something better for a legacy than my visiting card with a big company. And that is how this came about. And, it became a natural extension because for me, if tech is defining the future, there just aren't enough women in it. I mean, just to share some stats here with you, India has the highest number of STEM grads. It's about 2.6 million. That's higher than the US. 1/3 are women. So actually, we don't have such huge problems at college levels. Could get better, but you're talking about close to 1 million women coming out of different engineering colleges or whatever. Then what happens is they all join workforce and they all join in marginalized or sidelined roles. I'm not holding organization responsible. I'm a great believer that women have to do PhD in the way Dr. Anurag just described. They have to have their own passion, hunger, and drive to push this forward and have the ambition to do it. And if I look at STEM, just to give you a number, so entry level, you ask any organization, sab bolte hain 30-35%. Okay. And the moment you go to mid levels in STEM, it drops drastically to 8%. Whereas FMCG or fintech or banks are close to 15 to 18%, depending on which sector you're talking. I'm talking only India. You go at CXO levels, less than 1%. All other sectors are 3 to 4%. And those are numbers, even globally, we are much lower than that. So very limited point is if tech is going to be defining the future, then where are the women in it? Do they really need to be there? What's broken? I mean, I've had lots of these debates in boards and CXO levels, and I'm usually, connecting this to how well it can improve the P&L rather than saying McKinsey says so we should do it. I mean, small examples, which I've just spoken about recently in some other, client meetings. I mean, have you seen a woman trying to open a food jar, while she's cooking? I often struggle with it. I run to my husband saying, "Khul nahi raha yaar, please khol do." Whether it's a jar of a jam or an achar or whatever. Why can't jars be made simple? It's simple product design. Have you ever asked a pregnant woman, how is it for her to drive with the seat belt? It's extremely uncomfortable. Who designed the seat belts? Because most pregnant women will tie the seat belt behind them because they can't. And which by default fails the safety feature which the cars are trying to provide. You talk to insurance companies, where are the insurance products for women who suffer in marital relationships? Can there be a product against, a prenup against, bad marriages? So I can go on, even typing. So if I go back to the fundamental issue is, where are the women who are designing these products? So I'm a great believer of pushing the women. There are very few women in India who have IPs to their name. I can count them on my fingertips, who are part of our platform. Most of them are largely in coding roles. And as a result, you have very few women even getting into CXO roles. So I think if you have a balance, I'm not saying we have to have 70% women, but if you have a 50-50 balance, you get better connectivity on the products and the designs, which can be there, which can thereby improve the P&Ls of the organization. So that is what pushed me into this. And I can tell you, Sanandan, that last 9 or 10 months, we have just gone completely bananas because we've now got 100 companies working with us, and we're just now going into exponential growth, and we're going for a fundraise. But there is an opportunity for the right products. I've been on the other side where companies talk about gender diversity. There are 3 buckets of companies. One is who get it, the others who are getting it, and third is who don't get it but must do it because everybody else is doing it, right? We are a B2B to C, so we're trying to move them across the spectrum. But that's what kind of pulled me onto this agenda.
Puneet,
Kumar, I just wanted to tell you
about women in technology as well, Puneet.
Yeah, Sanandan, just before, my PhD is permanent head damage. I have a permanent head damage. I'm sure you don't recommend that to anyone. But you're so right that I've never thought about the jar thing that you're saying, but it's so true. I've never thought about the car belt. I mean, we just
the seat belt. Yeah, absolutely.
We're not sensitized. We kind of, and we're not challenging the status quo. We kind of accepted it and we move on with it.
And so do women, sir. So do women.
But let me add a little bit here.
Adjust to it. Let's put it like that.
So Ranjit, I was trying to hold back, but I really need to add here that it's fast changing as well, which is again a very, very good sign. today I have my team members walking into my room and say, hey, it's my first day of periods, Pankaj, I have to go, I'm not feeling that well. For me, it was a cultural shock the first time. It's not a joke, but it was also a sigh of relief. And the amount of products you start seeing about menstrual hygiene, that is a sign in itself. And, we are in fact on the forefront of doing a lot of work there. Of course, to answer Anurag's question also very quickly, so the idea was my wife and my co-founders who is a consumer, and my father used to run a lingerie store, before I went to IT. He said you should not run a lingerie business, and but fate had it coming other way. So I think we guys literally are trying to find solutions to a lot of these smaller problems, and you're absolutely bang on. All you got to do is just throw a stone and you're actually going to hit one problem which a woman hasn't thought for herself yet. Another very quick addition, I know this is not my time, but on the digital side, the consumer side of it is also evolving super fast right now. You would see the amount of consumption that women are doing is far more than they were doing 3 years ago. And I think that's where a lot of innovation is also being driven, because the disposable income has started to happen. So there are a lot of positives and silver linings out there as well. Just wanted to point them out.
But it's funny that we don't think about so many things. We just take it for granted and we keep running with it till somebody who's very creative and really cares about things comes up with a new way to do the same thing in a much better manner and much better for a certain set of people. So it's funny. So then we should close by asking all three of them very quickly, all four of them, what are their three predictions for the future in terms of the digital transformation that every business and the society is seeing? And let us start this time with Anuranjita, and then let's go around the house. She was the last in the first round, so it's only fair that we start with you.
No, I got used to collecting everybody's views and then forming mine. So you just put me on the spot. But no, on a serious note, I think prediction would be that, agility and pace is going to pick up. So for us as organization, I will emphasize speed again and again. Second is, consumers are going to be very, very picky. We are seeing that. Third is, I'm an eternal optimist. So digital, no digital, I think employment is going through the roof, and that's good news for the industry, because right now we have our hands full. So I think 21, we are going to see more growth than certainly 2020. And I do hope that people get back to work, more disposable income, and all your businesses may well thrive.
So part of it is prediction, part of it is a wish list. Pankaj Virmani, your prediction for the future?
So I think most of the digital roles in the organizations were, preparing for the future. Now it is, survival of the present. So I think digital transformation will not be one of the things that you do. It will be your survival, key to your survival now. And I think, of course, no surprises or no prizes for that one. I think that is something that is already happening. I see a lot of brands which were all national offline brands which are calling me and say, dude, can you help us how to use Shopify? It's gotten to that level now where the panic is kicking in. So I think digital transformation will happen, and all of a sudden we'll start seeing a lot more improvement in the distribution across town. Second is, of course, bang on the consumer. The consumer is going to get more and more picky, more irritated with time. There is absolutely no patience that is coming your way. And third is, I think this digital transformation will lead to a lot of democratization of certain things which we always thought are for example, distribution. 10 years from now, people who thought that you could sell any product as long as you have the strongest distribution in town, they will all run for cover, because all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of democracy kicking in there, which makes it a level playing ground for the smallest guy out there to probably use a digital ecosystem and kind of ship their products even in the offline scenario, and we're seeing this in our industry happening now. So I think that is something. So product innovation will have to be the key here on for you to.
Vivek Sundar, your three predictions.
I think we will revert to a more reasonable balance of leveraging technology and human interactions. Right now, the pendulum has swung too much towards digital, as I think Rajita was talking about. So I think there will be balance. It will be much higher than before, but it will still be a balance. I think that the companies will not think about digital as a leg of their strategy, but will think of it as natural as any industrial company thought of electricity. When electricity came in, people didn't have electricity as a strategy, right? I'm going to leverage electricity. It's just natural. So I think they will get to a place where people will not say, do you have a digital strategy? It will just be, what's your strategy? And So it'll be the normalization of digital as a core. And I think third one would be that hopefully we'll, as a group, appreciate the good things that we had before the pandemic, and there should be businesses that come in that actually leverage the good things of the past and bring them back in a safe and good manner, and while keeping out all the excesses of the pre-pandemic world. So in that sense, there is a sort of cliffing or a sort of line in the sand that hopefully will be drawn.
And Puneet, final word from you before me and Sunandan give our inputs.
I'll just take one important point from Vivek. He just said that, and that's very important, that digital will no longer be considered as a division in an organization, right? Digital will be the organization. Digital will be all permeating strategy that defines every step that the organization takes. And the last point I would say that every business which is not digital right now, and with the definition that we have all talked about, right, needs to actively figure out what part of the business they cannibalize. Because Sunandan, you touched about that innovator's dilemma fact, right?
Right.
If you don't cannibalize a part of your business for a new business stream or an opportunity that's coming forward, someone else is going to cannibalize your business.
Absolutely.
Right? So how do you selectively cannibalize and grow your business is what every business and every business leader would have to think and spend time on to be ready for the future. That's what I would sum up with.
I can only say that we now know that we don't know what will happen in the future. So I hope it's made all of us more humble. That second two tangible things, I mean, I agree with whatever has been said, and that's the reality. Hopefully will be the reality. My view is, singularity will happen before 2034. All the support businesses to digital will grow. For example, the biggest investments are coming into warehousing. In real estate sector, warehousing is the new sector that's really blossoming. Delivery companies and supply chain management will become even more profitable and technology-led across functions that we didn't. And last, blockchain, will get implemented in a very big way in the way we do business next year. I mean, cryptocurrency is one part of blockchains, but blockchain applications in manufacturing, in banking, everywhere, blockchain will come in a big way. Of course, artificial intelligence and machine learning, every company should not be an artificial intelligence company. It has to be an artificial intelligence company. And I would dare I say last thing, brands that are solid, and you know what solid brands mean, will possibly get better market share, they will get better relationships and a better price realization. So brand building in a digital to consumer the world will still be very important.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we've had a fabulous session today. I mean, great minds, great thoughts. And I think, Anurag, we can perhaps get together once again, because there are areas that we haven't even touched. For example, how will different businesses change in this technology in this digital world, and also about the role of CEOs, etc. But I think everybody's got to go. The time's it's 7 o'clock already. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks, Vivek. Thanks, Puneet. Thank you, Anirudh. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for being there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.